Well, someone who's seen more than her fair share of debates is Susan Eisenhower, foreign policy expert and granddaughter of President Eisenhower, and a lifelong Republican who ended up backing Barack Obama in 2008. She joins us now live from Washington. Susan Eisenhower, thank you very much indeed for being with us. Are you having cause to regret your decision in 2008 or not?
Well, I don't think so. I've been watching this campaign very carefully, and I think the president has very much showed the demeanor of a president, but the tastes these days are much more combative and much more confrontational.
Do you think he could be vulnerable this evening in a foreign policy debate?
Well, I think Mitt Romney is going to try very hard to make the president look weak and unfocused. I think he learned something from the first debate, which is if he can sort of command the room, if he can command the stage, that the president ends up looking like a weak president, not just someone who's been overwhelmed by the pace and, frankly, the aggressive nature of the debate itself. I think Obama's learned, though, now after the first two debates. And I hope, I know all of America hopes that we're going to get some substance here instead of some of the he said, she said, no, you didn't, yes, I did, which we saw last time.
On the substance, one of the topics tonight is America's role in the world. Once people would have said that this is a monopolar world, America is the most powerful nation. What do you think is the difference between the answers that the two candidates will give to that question as to what America's role in the world is?
Well, first of all, this is not an open election as it was 4 years ago, where you had two people who were on the scene who were not sitting presidents. Obama's got a disadvantage because he's the president. He has a day job, and he actually has to live in a space that's highly complex. He knows all of the ins and outs, all the many considerations he has to focus on when he makes a decision. Mitt Romney, of course, is living in the space of everything's really quite simple. And I'm afraid that we're living in a time where everything's quite simple has some appeal. Now, it's not going to be very easy for the president to address the complexity on a television program, so he's going to have to see if he can bring some kind of sum total to these last 4 years.
I suppose what I was driving at is that some on the Republican side would argue that Barack Obama has belittled America's role in the world, that he's done a so-called surrender tour, that he's not a true patriot.
Well, I think this is shocking. I first of all, do not come from any tradition that ever questions anyone's patriotism. I think the president has stood strong for this country. We keep forgetting that he had the courage to take out Osama bin Laden at a time when, his predecessor had bypassed one or two opportunities. I think he's been very strong, and frankly, it takes a lot of courage to get out of unpopular wars. I've been impressed by the First Lady, for instance, who has made veterans issues one of her major issues, and all of us who are involved in veterans issues one way or the other understand that America does not have the troop capability it did 8 years ago. This country is war-weary, and I'll be interested to see how Romney handles that tonight.
But if you take, for example, the famous speech to the Muslim world delivered in Cairo, the outcome of that has been somewhat disappointing, hasn't it?
Well, it is, but revolutions, and this is what's underway in the Middle East, they're often messy. I'm a student of the Soviet period and the collapse of the Soviet Union and the developments in new Russia. This is now 20 years into this. And in fact, in Russia, what we have today is an unfinished revolution, you could argue. But these things are messy, and public figures who get up and make it sound like it's easy are doing the American people an injustice. We're really ready to hear that this is a complex world. But what both men have to do tonight is to create an aura that makes the American people feel safe. We're tired. Many people in this country complain the wars have gone on too long, the jobless rate's still too high, and Americans are really looking for reassurance.
Would you expect any bellicose language from either side on the question of Iran?
I think anything is possible in that regard. It would be interesting to know whether in the debate prep there were any course corrections, but there's a real possibility that they'll try and outdo each other, not only on the Iranian question, but also on China and other issues. The Iranian situation is actually very serious. It's simply not as simple as the newspapers would make you believe, unless you're reading, the experts. Iran is a coherent country that's got a major military, that's got a lot of troops and arms. This is just, and I guess one of the debates is between two worldviews about how simple wars are to fight. I think the Romney plan for what he's going to do in his first 100 days underscores a very simplistic view of how he's going to take the reins as chief executive, should he be elected. One of my favorites here, Adam, if you don't mind me saying so, is in the Romney first 100 days, he is going to try and get defense spending up to 4% of GDP, and he calls that a floor, not a ceiling. I've made the point in my commentary here in the United States that this is completely untethered to strategy. So we need to hear from Mitt Romney what his strategy is, not just these one-liners about the president.
Finally, who do you think is closest to what's sometimes called the Israel lobby in the United States?
Well, the Israel lobby is the Israel lobby. The question is, could any of the relationships that currently exist indicate that either one of these candidates is not a friend of Israel? I think President Obama has been quite clear about the fact that he stands with Israel. The United States intelligence services have been working very, very closely with Israeli intelligence on cyber offensives and that type of thing, which are very sophisticated and very below the radar screen. But there has been a lot of cooperation. The question is really, is it smart for any presidential candidate to say things that are so firm that, in fact, when he goes into a second term or a first term for Romney, that he's painted into a corner? Unfortunately, in foreign policy, we can't give definitive answers because all of these situations are evolving.
Susan Eisenhower, thank you very much indeed for joining us from Washington, D.C.